Welcome to the Sleeping Barber Podcast.
Guess what? It is 2025.
Just like that. You blinked, you missed a year.
All of a sudden. And then we have our new Barber's Brief episode out. The first one of the year coming out.
That's right. The first one of the year. We're really excited to kick off the year. I think we have some really great things that we'd love to highlight. But more importantly, just really kick off the year that it will be. I think we're really excited on what this year will bring for us and the podcast. And looking forward to getting into it with you.
Yeah. What is the Barber's Brief, by the way, V? For people who may be just listening for the first time.
Yeah. So if you are a new listener, first of all, thank you for lending us your ears. Mark and I use this forum to discuss things that have caught our eye in the last couple of weeks, cover anything in the news or maybe some new insights that may come in. We highlight what we call a marketing moment, or sometimes it's a case study, or it could be research that we come across that we want to bring to you, the listeners. And then we always get into an ad of the week to kind of end things off in a creative fashion. So yeah, it's our way to get on here. It's our way of getting on here and just kind of talking shop.
Perfect.
In a really relaxed atmosphere.
Very relaxed. You're going to love
music.
It's going to be very great.
We don't
Pour a
have
glass
music.
of wine. Here we go. Ready?
All right. Yeah. You're up first.
Marc Ritson's annual top 10 marketing moments.
I love these.
Yeah, they're so good. And there's a YouTube link that we'll put in here. I'm not going to go through all the details of all these. We can talk about a couple of them. And we're breaking it into two parts. So normally we'd do 2 stories each, but there's 10 of them. So I'm going to use 5 and 5.
No problem.
So for part 1, number 10, Coca-Cola's AI generated Christmas commercial.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't mind talking about that one, actually. There's excessive celebration with liquid death is number 9.
Here. I agree with
McDonald's pricing gotcha at number 8. The consistency at Christmas, number 7. And number 6, McCain's Grand Prix Award from the IPA Effectiveness Awards. Any of those that kind of pop out to you?
I love number 9. I agree with number 10 as well. So number 9 being excessive celebration of liquid death. I still have not had liquid death.
I've had it once.
Right. You know what I mean? And I think being so celebrated by marketing communities, all the Christmas festivities, the holiday festivities that I went to, no one had liquid death in their fridges. Everyone still held bubbly. Now, again, I don't want to use mine as a focus group. Yeah. But it's like, I'm just not seeing it. I'm not seeing it out there. Not saying that there isn't some marketing genius behind how they approach the brand, et cetera. That, yes, obviously, but I just don't think like they've reached that adoption rate that I think everyone assumes that they have.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, there's another one, the Coca-Cola one I said I wanted to chat about. Yeah. I thought that was interesting because the Campaign, the magazine or the online website, last year said the Amazon Christmas commercial that came out, one with the people coming down, the old ladies that were riding on the toboggans going down the hill.
Yep.
They called that the turkey of the week, the ad turkey of the week, meaning it's garbage. And they said the same thing about Coca-Cola's AI-generated Christmas commercial this year. Testing from System 1 shows that it did really well. It was like ad of the year, actually, from Amazon last year. So it was a really interesting perspective that Mark had on this one, that you have one person saying something is really bad, and they get a lot of press because they've got the volume of audience that one person has on a platform like Campaign.
Yeah.
The pre-testing stuff is the stuff that matters a lot because you're testing it against thousands and thousands of people. So
totally,
I thought that was a really good point. Like, AI or not, it's also like repeating on the brand codes, and like the distinctive brand assets that Coke has been using for years and years and years. So yeah, I thought that was.
I would argue because I remember watching that, and if I wasn't prompted that, hey, this is an AI ad, or I went about it that way.
Yeah,
and I wasn't looking. The way I was looking at the ad was not the same way I would have normally. People that are just in passing watching it, they probably wouldn't have picked up that it was AI.
Totally.
So it goes back to consistency, frequency, and coming back to this ability just to maintain every year. They're always doing a Christmas commercial. So that's all that was. And it worked. Yeah. I'm not surprised.
The McDonald's one was super interesting too, in that they've been driving a lot of profit over the last few years, and they've been killing it. McDonald's in general. We've talked about them a lot over the last year.
Yeah.
The thing that Marc highlighted was their revenue versus their profit over the last, I think it was over the last 20 years they showed this graph, but they've been increasing their pricing and driving profit. And so really interesting to see how they've done that and how marketing has been supporting that.
Right.
And so their ads and the perceived value of McDonald's is probably at an all-time high.
Probably.
Which is a really interesting thing to take a look at.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What do you got, Beat?
So my first ad, so I came across this over the holidays, and it kind of, I don't know, consider it more of a thumb stopper more than anything. And the title was "How Small Brands Grow: A New Take on Marketing Strategies," and I think that's what got me. So it's a fascinating new idea that's kind of making waves in our space. A playbook essentially specifically tailored to small brands. We are all very much familiar of Byron Sharp's, Professor Sharp, sorry, How Brands Grow, and it's hailed as one of the most influential, or Bible, if you will, of understanding how big brands can maintain their market positions. We talk about it, everyone's talking about it, and I think it's all fair and good. However, there are critics out there, and I, for one, I think would agree in some forms that this is probably more beneficial to already established brands. But critics argue that it offers little guidance for smaller insurgent brands looking to grow. So there was a post by Julia Skinner that has nearly 1,500 likes, over 1,300 comments, and 50 reposts. That should we be creating a book called How Small Brands Grow, which was originally proposed by a gentleman by the name of Roger Jackson, but it was also inspired by a conversation that friend of the podcast, Dale Harrison, had with Julia Skinner on this idea of a hypothetical book. So there's 13 chapters. I'm not going to cover them all, but one of the chapters could be something to the effect of copycatting giants won't make you one. The STP, the secret sauce for small brands, and STP being segmentation, targeting, positioning, something actually I didn't know or when I was reading that post originally. Being obsessed with your consumer, and she even suggested a bonus chapter being something to the effect of retention versus acquisition. Growth needs new customers, emphasizing the retention alone isn't enough for meaningful growth. I think, I don't know what you think about this, but I think there is a blueprint here, or there is something here to kind of help those smaller brands reach or start those first the first steps in their growth. And I thought it was a really well done post. I'm all for one. I'd buy that book.
Yeah, I saw that too. I think you tagged me in it, maybe.
I did.
Yeah, it's a cool idea for sure. I think there's a lot of people that feel How Brands Grow isn't for them because of various things. Like they're a small brand or they're a luxury brand, and so they wrote How Brands Grow too for some of those other categories, like durables is one of the things.
Yeah.
I mean, there's. I think what's helpful with this, and what I really appreciate about it, is that the books themselves, How Brands Grow, are dense reads.
Yeah, they're big.
They're really dense. The stuff in them is amazing, and the more accessible you make that content, the better.
Yeah.
So if this is one of those ways of making that content more accessible, awesome.
I'm with you.
I don't know that so a lot of these things here, as I read the post, I was kind of like, I think a lot of that's already there. I hear like an echo of something Professor Sharp has said before about it only takes a little bit of imagination to think about how you could do this for a small brand, or how you could do this for that brand. And so I think it's a little bit of that, but a lot of it is just the accessibility of the information, I think is what would be great about this.
You know what? I love what you just said there. And I think that's what makes books like Dan White's books that are smaller. They have all the information
totally
cited properly, etc. Like I could see it taking life that way more than actually just being another textbook.
Totally.
I think that's the way I look at, how brands grow. It's not, you're right. It's a very dense read. It's a long read. But if we can create more of a digestible format, the same way Dan White does his, I think there's something there for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
All right, back to our top 10.
Okay, so Marc Ritson's annual top 10. Sorry. So continues. So we've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to cover here. Okay, so at number 5, the Oasis Reunion Tour dynamic pricing. I didn't actually know that was a thing.
Me neither.
But they have a reunion tour, and they used dynamic, like Uber style surge pricing kind of thing for their ticket sales. There's a lot of shitstorm that they got in with PR and that kind of stuff because people were trying to buy tickets, and when they went through the checkout process, sometimes the tickets were up by double or triple.
Not fun.
But it's like still a really interesting model that we should probably consider. Starbucks positioning. This one was really interesting. So this is at number 4.
Yeah.
Starbucks had a lot of different things that they've talked about over the last few years in terms of their mission. They've had a lot of turnover at the CEO position. They've kind of redone their vision or their mission every time. Most recently saying, with every cup, every conversation, every community, we nurture the limitless possibilities of human connection.
There it is.
I thought the one part that was really great about this particular comment from Marc at number 4 was that brands often overstate their importance. And his idea is that proper positioning starts with humility. Brands need to understand their unimportance first. And he gives an example of Kit Kat. The breaks are good for you. Very simple.
Yeah.
If you can't put your positioning on one page, then you probably don't have it right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really, and there's a lot of tie-in, I think, to the promise to the customer that
that's a good point.
There's some interesting tie-ins there. At number 3, we have Nike. We talked a lot about that. There's a really great podcast from Work and Anne-Marie Kerwin covering the Nike mistakes. So that was a huge story from last year. At number 2, again, this is more of a UK-centric one, but there's some really good learning from this one. So return of Marks and Spencer. So Marks and Spencer, a British food and fashion retailer. It's been around for 100 years. They were kind of losing their way. More and more competitors and changing retail experiences. And they did a lot of great things in rebuilding the brand.
Yeah.
And it didn't start with rebranding. It kind of, one of the things I thought was great was they went back to the old stuff and went, this is amazing. Let's do more of this. Yeah. And it worked then. Why wouldn't it work now? So they just refreshed it, right? Rather than like blew up the whole thing. Yeah. Which brings us to the number 1 story of the year last year. The rebirth of Jaguar. And so Marc's point is that, agree they need to adapt and drive their growth. We've talked a lot about Jaguar. Everybody's talked a lot about Jaguar. Mm-hmm. I don't know that the average person really cares or even thought much about this. One point that Marc had I thought was really interesting is that they talk about inclusivity and diversity in the ad that they came out with. And yet the irony is that I think it was the COO, the guy who was leading, I forget his name, the guy who's leading this rebirth, had said, we're okay with losing 85% of our customers. Yeah. Even though in their ads are saying inclusion and diversity is really important. So the irony of that was kind of interesting. Anyway, lots to be said for Jaguar, lots of interesting things, but lots of really interesting stories in that series from Marc.
Yeah, no, and just a couple things, excuse me, on this. First of all, I'd like to see that Marc Ritson agrees with me because I did point that the biggest surprise of the year was Jaguar. So here, Marc, I agree with. Thanks for agreeing with me. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, I think the number 3, like the mistakes of Nike, there's a lot to unpack here, and I feel that everyone should take some time and really familiarize themselves with what Nike has done because this is right at that C-level suite where these decisions were being made. And when we're thinking about long-term versus short-term, like there's a way to really, compartmentalize this in some way to really showcase, okay, what should you not be looking to replicate in your own businesses? Because like I said, Nike has been for the longest time the king of footwear, apparel, athleisure, etc.
Innovation, all
Innovation. That, they opened the door for all these other competitors to come in, the Hokas, the Ons, the etc. So, I mean, that for me is just really, really important. Make sure people get time. And I know you mentioned a great podcast that Work did on it. And I would argue take some time with it because I think there's
we'll
a
put
lot
that link in the show notes too for that one. Yeah, it's great. What else you got, V?
My last one was actually more a little more fun as we're kind of getting into the new year resolutions, etc. Chipotle expands Strava tie-up globally to fuel New Year's fitness goals. So we're Strava users, you know, we log a lot of our miles on it, etc. So Chipotle is really doubling down on a partnership that they created last year with Strava, and where they saw over 9.2 million miles on the Chipotle assigned segments, which is incredible to see that they had that kind of adoption. So again, they're linking back up with Strava. They're focused on route segment and accompanying challenge time for New Year's per press release that was released just towards the end of the year. The city challenge includes 25 segments or portions of roads and trails where users can enter their friendly competition across cities in North America and Europe. The user in each city that completes their segment the most between January 2nd to 31st will be awarded free Chipotle lifestyle bowls for a year.
That's pretty good.
That's not too bad, just for riding your bike or running or whatever you're doing. There's a leaderboard, obviously, if anyone's familiar here with Strava, there's a leaderboard to display each city's results, with the top performing areas rewarded with a buy one, get one free entry offer. Additionally, Chipotle will also launch an SMS activation around the brand, Bill's No Quitter Day, counter that to that day, how many people are likely to forfeit their New Year's resolution. So put together just like 3 or 4 reasons why we like this. Obviously, it's aligning with consumer goals. Chipotle is able to tap into that nearly 80% of consumers setting health-oriented New Year's objectives or goals. It's already leveraging a partnership, an engaged partnership that they've had, or a successful partnership, in the past, and just kind of going a little bit deeper with that. They're getting creative around the activating around Quitters Day, because it is a day. I think it's January 20th, if I'm not also known as Blue Monday. If I'm not,
I don't know, but it sounds
where
about
most of
right.
the resolutions go the wayside. So that's why I always start my goals after that. So then,
perfect,
right?
That's a good hack.
Life lessons. I set my goals on January 26th. Anyway, sorry. And then global and local scalability. So there's a localized element to this, speaking to all the athletes in their respective regions, but then there's also a global element, bringing this all together as one leaderboard. So I think it's really great.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. Cool partnership idea.
Totally.
We should talk more about partnerships at some point this year, because there's so many different ways to do them, and some of them are bad. And there's some of them, like this one, I think are pretty interesting, that have good connection. Because Chipotle is also, I would arguably say, one of the healthier options for fast food.
It's the new Subway, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
For our generation, sorry. For those that don't know what I'm talking about.
Was it QSR? I think it's QSR, quick service restaurant. Yeah. It's like the healthy version. Yeah. They're good. It's awesome. And it's like real food and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really good alignment between values there of the two different groups.
I agree.
Cool.
All right. On to our first marketing moment of 2025. And you, my friend, have the mic.
So when I was listening to the Marc Ritson podcast, he talked about there's a study from Wharton. We'll at some point get into that. Not today. But it reminded me of one that also came up when we were talking to him. Remember, we had that conversation with James Hankins. When I was listening to Marc Ritson's talk, he talked about profitability, how important it was. And there's a great study from Wharton. There's a similar study that it triggered my memory on that I thought it would be great to review. It's called Questioning the Growth Dogma, a replication study. So this is an 8-year study of almost let's call it 700,000 Europeans, SMEs, so small, medium enterprise companies. And they looked at these companies that were between 10 and 250 employees over a period of time from 2011 to 2019 in a whole bunch of different industries: manufacturing, retail, professional services. And they looked at companies that were growth oriented, meaning they were defined by sales, versus companies that were profit oriented. So they were looking at return on assets. So the net income divided by total assets. And what they found was that regardless of the company size, their industry or their age of company, profit-oriented firms, so meaning people that were focused on profit, and we always talk about chasing profitability,
we do,
are more likely to succeed than growth-oriented firms. And the opposite is also true. Growth-oriented firms are more likely to fail than profit-oriented firms. So it sounds kind of obvious, but when you think about it, it's not always obvious. There's often, you and I have been in these situations a lot, where there's a lot of organizations that are chasing a revenue number and not a profitability number. And so that's like, if you're looking at ways to drive more certainty about your future and have sustainability for the company and the organization, trying to do things that are focused on profit, that drive profit, is the way that you're going to, improve your odds of success. So it's kind of interesting because this is a big study. It's not the first time they've done that.
Yeah.
This is a replicated study. So this is, at least the second time that this has been done. So I thought that was just kind of interesting. We joke around all the time about chasing profit, but there's a lot of decisions that are made that are not about chasing profit. It's just about chasing a revenue number.
Wait, are you suggesting that we're onto something?
We might be onto something, is what I'm saying.
Well, first of all, there's a couple things on this that I think that are really interesting. So you would have recalled in our previous experience, we had one of our leaders that would constantly say, drive top line and then manage your bottom line. So essentially what he was suggesting is drive revenue or drive growth, and then look how you manage your profitability. Right. That could be by, we see it every day, marketing budget getting cut, travel expenses getting cut, like all those things. And that's a way of managing somewhat your bottom line. But in doing so that way, it's almost that you're hyper focusing on the growth, but you may not be able to salvage profitability if you're not having those things closer tied together. So I think I completely agree with you on that. The nuance here, though, I believe exists with startups, because startups they're so, especially out of the gun, they have to show that they can drive revenue or top line growth. They're never focused on profitability, that's a generalization. I don't mean not every startup is going to be the same way, but in most cases, they're not worried about being profitable out of the gate. They want to show that they can drive that volume. That's how they get a lot of the funding. So I think there's a small nuance there, but I completely agree, especially for a lot of these longer established organizations, taking that shift to say, well, how profitable are we actually, can change the way that you actually put together your strategies moving forward than just driving growth. Yeah.
I mean, the nuance with the startups, I totally get your point. It reminds me a little bit of it was one of our first interviews that we had with Roger Martin. We were talking about shareholder value.
Right.
And shareholder value, we see that all the time. Like, a lot of times organizations chase this expectation from the market of what their share price or their revenue targets should be. And if they miss, then, the market cap drops, people stop investing, and, all that kind of stuff happens. But it doesn't necessarily secure their long-term viability as an organization. Right. Same kind of thing with the startups. A lot of times I feel like what they're doing is that they're going after some kind of proof of product market fit, which is what the revenue number is showing, is that it's an easy way to track whether they're getting traction in the market, whether people want to adopt the product or service or whatever in the market. But at the same time, and a lot of that I think is driven by investors in some cases, depending on the size of the
100%.
organization, that kind of thing. Liquid Death, one of the things Marc talked about was they had never made a profit until I think they just started making a profit this year. Amazon's famous for not having done that. These are big companies that eventually became successful, but somewhere in the range of 70 to 90% of startups fail. So I'm not sure that, you know what I mean? There's risk there in just going after revenue.
Growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, there's lots to talk about that. I think there's lots of ways we can kind of cover that some more later on in this year, but I think it's we're on to something, as you said.
100%.
With the profit thing.
How smart we are.
Yeah. Out of the week.
Yeah. So the back half of December, obviously, for those that followed along, we basically changed some of our barbers briefs into different formats. We did our year review with Connor and Elena. So we weren't able to highlight an actual ad of the week for a good month. But off of, I think it was roughly the end of November, Apple also does holiday ads. For those that don't know, they aired their holiday ad called Heartstrings. We know that they're notorious for picking out a specific RTB or a reason to buy and then creating campaign around it. So in this case, the AirPods Pro 2 actually have a hearing aid function or feature built right in. So the storyline is very simple. In this very touching family-oriented commercial, and I would argue you would probably need some tissues to watch this, there's a small family that's pictured that is gathered around a Christmas tree. They're opening presents. And as the father reminisces about his daughter growing up over the years, he gets a nudge from his wife to listen to his daughter singing a rendition of Our House by Crosby, Stills and Nash, where he puts on his AirPods and he's able to hear her clearly. And I think that's where it becomes pretty impactful and powerful. It's like, oh, okay, wow. I thought this was an incredible ad. Again, it does one thing Apple does really well, really picks up that one reason to buy and creates a connection to the consumer as to the why you should be considering this product. And I think it was worth at least kicking off the year with this, because I think it was really well done. Oh, and by the way, the agencies behind it was TWA and the Media Arts Lab.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, there's a few things in here that I think are really smart. One is that they feature the product in use as well.
Yeah.
Apple's really good at that, making them. Yeah.
100%.
The reason to buy thing is it's kind of like this is a super emotional one. That's really great.
Yeah.
Using real footage, all that kind of stuff, or it looks like real footage. Yeah. There's lots of, Apple's just really good.
They're good at this.
They're good at this. I think, I mean, if you break it down, using emotion, using the product, putting in a use case, something that's memorable, also something that's a bit surprising because I didn't know that they had that feature.
Right.
It's really interesting. Also kind of fits in with the health angle that they're going towards.
Totally.
Yeah. Super interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, well done, Apple.
Right. Chapeau. Coming up next week, Marc, what do we have lined up? I know you already teased it on LinkedIn, but it's worth mentioning here as well.
Yeah. Well, lucky for us, we have Byron Sharp coming to visit us. Well, he already did visit us.
He already did.
Yeah. But Professor Byron Sharp was in the studio for an interview, and we're so excited about this interview. It's a New Year's resolution interview, so a little bit different take for us. I mean, there's, I think, about somewhere between 8 and 10 different resolutions that we had. Yeah. Of things that we think we should do as marketers. And then we made that statement and had him comment on some of those things. And we got into some really interesting conversations.
Yeah, we did.
He was so great. Yeah.
It was awesome. And I think it's probably one of the best listens to have at the beginning of the year as well. Kind of really solidifying, saying how you're going to approach 2025. I think there's a lot of great candid insights, practical advice, and plenty of myth busting from Professor Sharp himself. So I don't know. We really enjoyed doing the episode. I know everyone will enjoy listening to it.
Yeah, it was great. And with that, V, we have wrapped up our first Barber's Brief of 2025.
And right at 30 minutes. Look at that. It's like we haven't missed a beat. Bang, bang, bang.
Nailed it. I don't know about you, but I do have kids to drop off and then profitability to chase after that. So I am going to sign off. How about you?
I'm right there with you, buddy. There's
you got a flight towards profitability, I think, this week.
Tomorrow, actually.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I do have a flight this week.
Yeah.
I know this is airing Thursday, but I'm flying Tuesday. But anyways, It's all good. Busy week, busy start to the year, but I'm genuinely excited to, like I said, chase profitability like we do, and most importantly, make sure that we're fighting the good fight for marketers all around. I had to find a way to land that plane somehow. I don't know.
I love it. All right. We'll talk to you later, Pete.
Yeah. Thanks for keeping us in your ears. Ciao, ciao.